I'm John Oakley, and for my sins I've just retired as 11 years as church warden. I'm still church secretary and have been for the last 15 plus years.
And we're in the churchyard here in Sheriff Hutton, and I understand the churchyard has won awards for conservation.
We have, yes. Slightly cheekily at one stage we recommended that there should be a competition for the living churchyard, and we proceeded to win it for the first year, and were happily runners-up for the second year.
And which years was that? When was that?
92, 93 I think. We got involved in about 1990 following initial contact with Archbishop Hapgood and David Attenborough about 4 years previously. And one of our congregation members, Ovie Wallace, was, I think, chairman of the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust at one stage. So he persuaded us to run with the living churchyard, which we duly did. And funnily enough, you know, the first thing we did was nothing.
Yes.
We previously, the area that you can see around had been close cut, and round the gravestones had been weed killed. Horror from horror. So we stopped all that and did absolutely nothing for a year and saw what we'd got.
And what had you got?
We had a very rich, areas very rich in flowers and plants, particularly the area over on my left and to a lesser extent on my right and at the back of the church. Once we'd got those identified, we then had flower surveys, and then we were able to draw up a management plan. And the management plan basically is that where we've got a lot of flowers, we will leave it to grow into hay and cut it after the seed has set, remove the hay to impoverish the ground, and that will encourage flowers and the sort of less invasive species to thrive, and the real coarse grasses will eventually die out. Now, we made a terrible mistake when we started. We didn't publicise what we were doing, and people in the village were uptight when they saw this overgrown churchyard and they couldn't get to the graves of their loved ones. So I would say to anybody, if you're going to do this, do nothing, which is the right thing to find out what you've got, but for heaven's sake explain to people what you're doing. I'm happy to say now that we've established areas that are cut, particularly around the church, so the church is not poking out of a wilderness. It's in an area that's cared for, and the area of what I call living graves, people who are still tending the graves, we keep these cut, and we've provided paths through to the other areas. What we have done, though, is round the edges particularly, we have left it wild and woolly, thriving with nettles and ivy on the walls, the churchyard walls, not the church wall. And the result is that we've got, you know, feeding grounds for butterflies, shelter for wrens, etc. in the winter. It's very much a land management job, isn't it? It's not conservation, and although we talk about conservation and the Conservation Trust, we have had to stress that we are not in the conservation business. We're in the land management business. Conservation is one aspect. We have a public footpath. We're virtually standing on a public footpath that goes through the churchyard, so we have to keep that open. We've got to keep access to the graves for the people, for the families. We've got to keep access to new areas where we're still burying people and burying ashes. We've got to keep an eye on the trees. We only use native species in the churchyard. We're lucky that we have a glebe area behind me, which is a wooded area. So really trees are not particularly important because birds will fly in and out. Insects will fly in and out. Gravestones are important sources of lichen. We've had a lichen survey done, and we've got a phenomenal number of lichens, and please don't ask me what they are, because most of the names are totally unpronounceable.